Greetings everyone! This week we're going to continue our work with linear perspective. We worked with 1 point perspective last week, and this week we're going to add one more point. So we'll be working with 2 point linear perspective. The number of vanishing points, that's what tells us which perspective we're looking at. And with 1 point perspective, we had our central vanishing point that all of our receding lines, our convergence lines, went to. And we only had one dimension that was receding. This week we have 2 dimensions that are receding on our 3-dimensional object, and that would be your width as well as your depth. So we won't have any planes that are parallel to us. Only the verticals, or the height, is going to be the thing that is vertical to our or parallel to our person, and then everything else is going to be receding either to vanishing point 1 or vanishing point 2. So let's take a look at what that looks like. We'll get our drawing set up. So you guys are tasked with the same feats as last week, which would be to do your 10 boxes in 2 point perspective, and then you're going to be working through a couple of problems with 4 larger boxes. And while we're getting the setup done, I will talk to you about the things that we know, a little reminder from what you would have read in our PowerPoint presentation. So please remember to keep your format in the horizontal orientation, and then go ahead and place your horizon line somewhere near the middle of the page. What we know about linear perspective is that we want to work with a horizon line. We also want to work with vanishing points, and we would like to also have convergence lines. So those are the 3 ingredients that we have to have for perspective. And for this week, working in 2 point perspective, we're going to be placing those points at the edges of our format. So I have one little guy over here on my horizon line, and as I go over to the opposite side, the left side of my format, I have my other vanishing point. I'm going to label mine VP1 and VP2, just so I am very clear that I have 2 vanishing points and that I would like to use both of those. With this setup, then in 1 point perspective, we went ahead and we drew our shape, right? We had a true form. We don't have that any longer. We're really just working with verticals and angles, and any angle that we have in our drawing is going to be connected to vanishing point 1 or vanishing point 2. So let's choose a spot in which to place our vertical or our leading edge, which would be our starting point in our 2 point perspective. And we know that we have to have something to start with. So this is great, right? Our setup is complete, but now we need to have a starting point for our box. So I'm going to begin here in the center, or more central, and I'm going to place a vertical line. That's it to start with, just one vertical line. When we try to determine which linear perspective we're working with 1 point perspective, we'll be looking at a shape or a flat plane, and in 2 point perspective, we'll be looking at the corner or the edge of something. So an object that is at an angle. So that's what this is representative of. This is not only the front corner, it's also called the leading edge. And this is really nice, right? Oh, it's beautiful line work, but we need to do something with it. And with our 1 point perspective, you'll recall that from each of the 4 corners of our box, we drew a convergence line from each corner to that one vanishing point. So now we've got 2 vanishing points and a vertical line, right? A corner or a leading edge. So what we do have with that line is a top and a bottom. So from the top of this leading edge or front corner, I'm going to take a convergence line back to my vanishing point 1 or the vanishing point on the left. And then whatever I do on the top, I do on the bottom. So I have at the bottom of my vertical a convergence line that goes back to vanishing point 1 or your vanishing point on the left. What we determined last week in perspective is that it's really consistent, and that's the key. So the wonderful thing that I just talked about was whatever I do on the top, I do on the bottom. And whatever I do on the left, I do on the right. So this same process, well, this vanishing point 2 is getting no love so far. So what we want to do is the same thing, come from the top of our leading edge back to vanishing point 2. And we need to do the same thing here on the bottom. Okay, so how awesome is this? In 1 point perspective, as soon as we took those convergence lines back to that central vanishing point, we got an immediate feeling of depth being created, right? Something that's pushing out towards you or receding away from you. And the same thing happens here is that with that leading edge and taking convergence lines back to both sides, we end up with this V, and it gives the appearance of these two planes either projecting forward and meeting here or receding back. So however you like to think of it, but it has that feeling of a volume. So with our 1 point perspective, instead of having these infinite planes going back to a vanishing point, what we want to do is want to have a finite plane, because what we're doing is making a box. And if you'll recall, our boxes are our basic structure in linear perspective. So that's our basic building block is the cube. And once we learn how to work with developing all 6 sides of our cube, then we can manipulate, right? Carve away from, add to, stretch, all these different manipulations to that basic form. So with that being said, we would like to create a left corner and a right corner. So the thing that I want to do is I want to work within these planes. So I'm going to go ahead and whatever I do on one side, I do on the other, right? So if I have a vertical line, then I need to have another vertical line to create that left edge. So I'm just going to work from the top of that convergence line down to the bottom convergence line, right? Because I started and stopped here, run along this, start and stop here. Again, whatever I do on the left, do on the right. They do not have to be the same. You don't have to have the same distance. So for instance, I'll make this side a little bit shorter. We would like to remain parallel to our leading edge, which should also be parallel to the edges of your format. And another great way to think about it is perpendicular to your horizon line or at a right angle. This sets up a wonderful stability in the drawing, and if you maintain that vertical, then we have less instance of a misshapen box at the end. That as well as going to the exact same points. That's what's going to keep your shape consistent and believable. So right now I've got 2 front planes. I love it. It's wonderful. Now just to give you a little bit more clarity, I'm just going to erase a teeny bit right there and just on the outside of the plane. And we need another plane like this, and we need another one like that. So we know we've got 6 sides to create, and right now we only have 2. So if you recall from these step-by-step instructions in the PowerPoint, at this time we're going to create new content by working from the left corner or edge as well as the right corner or edge. So thinking back to our step where we took our convergence lines back from top and bottom, well, we have a new top and bottom here and a new top and bottom here. So we need to do the same thing. As I grab my ruler, I think about which direction do I want to go? Well, this is what's going to make it really clear to you. We're going to cross over center and go to the opposite vanishing point. So on the left corner, I'm going to use the right vanishing point, or vanishing point 2. Now, what you'll notice is if you get confused and you say, oh, I think I need to go from the left corner to my vanishing point on the left, or vanishing point 1, what you'll notice, draw it all the way back, is I don't get any new content. I'm just tracing over an existing convergence line from my initial, or my leading edge. And what we're after is new content. So in order to do that, what I want to do is go from top and bottom to the opposite vanishing point. So I'm going to work from this left, the top of the left corner, come all the way back to vanishing point 2. And whatever I do on the top, I do on the bottom. So right here at that intersection, line up with my vanishing point 2 and the bottom corner of the left, and run back. Okay, now we're talking. Now I've got new sets of convergence lines. And something that I'd like for you to take notice of at this point is that this plane here is running back to that vanishing point. This plane on the other side is running back to that vanishing point. So we have that idea of them running parallel. And that's how we would make a box. We've got to have sides here and here. So we've got this one and we've got this one. Whatever we do on the left, we do on the right. So from top and bottom, we're going to, on the right corner, we're going to our left vanishing point, or vanishing point 1. All right, so we have almost completed our box. So besides these front 2 planes, now we can see the top and the bottom have been defined. Fantastic. So where do we get that back corner, or that back edge? We're going to look for where our convergence lines cross one another. So there's an X here and an X here. And we would like to place in a vertical line. And that is going to complete our box structure. From here, what we'll do is we want to bring in our ink. We're going to end up with a lot of lines. So if you thought your 1-point perspective had a lot of lines, hold on to your hats. You're going to have a few more. So let's think about inking in a solid line the exterior information, and then, oops, go all the way. And then we'll do the same process as before with the broken line, or the dotted line. And then the remaining information that's here, we're going to bring it into play with our broken line. And last one right here. Okay. So let's go through another one of these step by step, and I think that would give us a really good foundation for you guys to get going on your boxes. We're going to be working all around our format, so we can choose anywhere for our next box to take place. I would like for you to think about the closer that you get to the edge of the format, the more extreme your angles are going to become. So if you think about looking at maybe a wide angle lens and how everything starts to get a little extreme as we go to the edges, most times when you're working, the vanishing points would not be on the page to have a more natural look to your subject, something that's more organic. And these extreme angles, it's like somebody took an accordion and squished it this way, and all of the peaks come up really, really high. So I'll build over here a little bit further to the one side, and then we'll see how that's looking. Okay. So we'll start again with a vertical or a leading edge, and that can be any size, so whatever you like. And you are welcome if you would like to, if you want to go ahead and ink that leading edge, because that's not going to change. So the other stuff we want to leave in until we're finished in graphite, and that is because you may not end up with a true connection there for that back edge. You might have something that's a little bit wonky, and it could be because you're not taking your lines back to the same point exactly, or it might also be that your verticals are not staying vertical in relationship to each other. So I took my convergence lines from the top and bottom of my leading edge back to vanishing point 1, and whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. So I'm going to come with receding lines from the top and bottom of my leading edge and take those back to vanishing point 2. With that done, the next thing that I want to do is I want to create a box. So right now I just have my 2 planes, and they're giving some good dimension, some good depth. But I want a finite shape, so I'm going to go ahead and place in, hopefully, another vertical, a nice clean vertical. And we're working within that plane, so we're working between the convergence lines that are extending towards that vanishing point. Again, your box doesn't have to be the same from side to side in terms of how deep it is. So I'm going to make mine rectangular because that sounds like fun. So we have new corners. So we had a front corner, now we have a left and we have a right. I'm going to work from the top and bottom of my left corner over to my right vanishing point, or vanishing point 2. And whatever I do on the left, I do on the right. So from the top of my right corner and the bottom of my right corner, I'm going to come over to my left vanishing point, or vanishing point 1. And then the last piece for me is where my convergence lines cross. I'll have X's, and X marks the spot, and that is where I ought to be able to throw down a vertical line. Let's make sure. Sweet. And I'm going to be placing that line from X to X. And this is cool. Below the horizon line, I seeing more of the top of my subject. And once my subject is above the horizon line, I'm seeing the bottom of it as far as the exterior. So when we think about that. Cool. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and ink in the, I'll use this one. I can see a little bit better. Let's have solid lines again for our exterior. And then we'll have a broken line or a dotted line for our interior, please. And you guys will figure out how you like to work with doing your ink. I find that there just become so many lines in this 2-point because I have double the amount of convergence lines that it's nice to ink in between each one. So it's up to you. If you are fine with it, then just keep building. You don't need to worry about inking it until the end. So whatever your process, if you want to do all the construction and then come and ink them all at the same time, great. If you want to do it piece by piece, awesome. You are in charge of that. So now we have our first 2. Let's go ahead and run through our, we have 8 more, all right? I realize I just forgot my back edge right here, back corner. And while I'm giving you a side note, you may want to keep your convergence lines light as they recede, especially since you're going to be building more and more of them. So take a look at this subject here. When I get close, again, when one side of my box gets close to the horizon line, look how much less space I see on that plane, right? It's flattening out, it's almost getting to be right on top. Oh, look at this boo-boo right here. Careful with your lines, guys. So that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So go ahead and number those so you make sure that you have all of the boxes that you're supposed to. And something I wanted to make mention of is that I have a little goob here and I've got a goob here. And what I mean by that is I have an extension of my ink line further than I need it here. And I started to follow a different convergence line here. My suggestion is that I started getting carried away of doing all my verticals, including my interior broken line, all in a row. And then taking this angle and doing the solid line for the exterior, coming down, doing the broken line for the interior, coming down, getting that bottom line that's hard for the exterior, and getting the last one. So trying to work more efficiently, and I got carried away and I missed my stopping point, and then here I started on a wrong path. So it turns out for me, the best way to keep my information clear and correct is to build the exterior of the box with all my hard lines and then go in and fill in the broken line. So however that works for you, but that's what was going on with mine. So we've got our 10 boxes. We're going to start a fresh page and we're going to work on those 4 boxes with 4 new problems. So we'll start our new drawing in the same way, which is a horizontal orientation for the page, the horizon line, and then we're going to be placing our vanishing points right at the edges of our paper, vanishing point 1 and vanishing point 2. That will give us our foundation, and then we're going to go ahead and build those 4 boxes just like we did in our 1-point perspective. Obviously now using 2-point perspective. I'm going to place one above the horizon line here. I'm going to place another one above the horizon line here. I'm going to put one down here, and I'll put another one here. Okay, so I have all my leading edges. You can do that if you wish, or you can build them one at a time. All right. I mean, you will be building them one at a time. I'm just giving myself location 2 above, 2 below the horizon line, and all I meant to say by that was to go ahead and place in all of my leading edges, but you can do your leading edges one at a time if you wish. Okay, so now that I have my 4 boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Inking only the perimeter, the exterior, that way we have some clarity on where we're working within. So last week, the first thing we did was we looked at perspective, center, and we're going to do that again. So it's just a refresher. The easiest, and you have all receding planes, right? This side's going over here. We have this side headed off to vanishing point 1. This plane's dealing with this and this side, so you've got recession everywhere. So the reminder is that we go from opposite corner to opposite corner along one plane, and then X marks the spot, and that is where you could place in a vertical line. Just trying to get my hand out of the way, hopefully you can see it. And then it's actually kind of groovy. Right here where the X is, I already have a convergence line headed back towards that vanishing point. And we just like to think again, there are no horizontals except for your horizon line in 2 point. And whatever is happening on the surface of this plane will behave the same way as the plane. So if the top and bottom lines are headed towards that vanishing point 2, then any information on the surface that follows is going to come that way too. So all we'll want to do here is go ahead and place in your vertical center, and we'll place in our center mark that comes across. That's it right here. So we found perspective center, and we can do that in a division, left to right or top to bottom. So on our second one, what we did is we were evenly dividing space. So evenly divide space. And what I would like to do is put my pen down for a moment. And I would like to work on this, this subject. Actually, why don't we do I have a better space? Yeah, you know what? Let me go ahead and work over here. So we're going to evenly divide space. And the reason that I'm choosing this area is because I want to show you an instance where we're going to be utilizing both the vanishing points for that content. So if I'm working on this plane or on this one, then my divisions are going to happen with a vertical or a transversal line and a convergence line that goes back to the single point. If I'm working across the surface here, I'm going to need to use both of those points because these lines do and these lines do. So I'd like to have you have practice with that, and I have just more area for that to happen. Up here it's a little slim. So all we need to do is use our knowledge of how we find perspective center, and then once we have that, we'll come across with our division, and that runs all the way back. And then I would like for you to, I think what I'll do is I'll just mark them as I go, because like before I said there's going to be a lot of lines. So I'm going to divide that in half. I would like to divide in half again on each side, so I end up with 4 panels. So what we do is we go from corner to our new corner, which is the bottom, so here to the center line, and then we're going to come from the center line to the opposite corner out here. And then where X is, that's where I come back to my vanishing point, right through the middle of that X and back. And I'd probably like to take the opportunity right now, I'll just throw my ink line in there, and then I have this last space. So from the corner to my opposite corner right here. So I'm working within this space, so we'll go over to that. And then I'm stretching from corner to corner, working from that center line out. And then X marks the spot. I'm going to come across. And I'm looking for my ruler to line up to where that X is. Right? X marks the spot for center. Oh, I could have left my ruler there. Darn. Okay. And then I'll just go ahead and place in that line. So again, the reason I wanted us to work on this surface, on this plane, is because our everything is receding. So we're using our vanishing point 1 for the front and back. We're using vanishing point 2 for the front and back. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our divisions the other way. And I already have information for center, right? I came across and I can see where that is. So I'll go ahead and run right through and back. And let's make that a little clearer. Right through here. And then we're going to go 2 more steps. We're going to divide here and we're going to divide here. So I'm getting a lot of lines underneath, and perhaps what I'd like to do is lighten up back there so I can see a little bit clearly. I don't need to eliminate the information altogether, but it is getting really busy. Keeping your lines light or coming back in and dusting with your eraser to lighten up, that works really well. So from corner to that midline, opposite corner to opposite corner, using the midline, here to here. And then I have center. And what's really awesome is that your center should stay along this center axis for the top, because that's what we found first. It'll just move it forward and backward. And then we're going to run through there all the way back. While I'm here, I'll go ahead and place my ink line. And then I want to repeat that same process. So from my center line to the opposite corner, and from the center line to the opposite corner. And you can see X marks the spot again right along that line. And that's going to go all the way back. And then this comes right to there. Beautiful! Oh, this is just so fun. And then what I like for you guys to do is fill in this space. Voila. Okay. So, and then for those of you that don't know what a checkerboard is, you have every other space being black and white. And your white will be the light of the paper. So you'll just be going through and filling those in. But and you don't have to make a checkerboard. This could be applicable to other situations. So we have perspective center. We're evenly dividing space. And I would like to work with our circle or our ellipse. And what we're going to do, so up here we'll work on our circle / ellipse, and then today / cylinder. Okay, so last time we were working, what we did was we found perspective center. We came through and made our markings, and that gave us markers to go through. So I'm going to run through here and here and here and here. And I want to try and get just a smooth run through, making sure that I don't come into any points, right? We remember that circles don't have corners last time I checked. And so this would be great. The next part of this is that we're going to repeat this process, and we're going to do it on the plane that is parallel to this one. So that would be this plane right here. You can see the angle on the top is the same, the angle on the bottom is the same. So let's go ahead and work our perspective center magic back here, corner to opposite corner. That'll give you your where to place in your vertical, and then we'll use our I changed my ruler earlier. I don't know if you guys were noticing that, because I have such a long ways to go. So my 24-inch ruler is really helpful because it can travel that distance. The other ones are not quite there. So again, I'm going to be working on making my circle. The nice thing is that I have some, if I'm confident in this initial circle that I've created, this ellipse, then what I can do is I have some new points or new markers along my diagonals that reach corner to corner. So with that, what we can do is go from that mark where I'm running through a diagonal, and then I can follow that back, and I can find the same spot right back here along that diagonal. Okay, so we have, once we create the front or this ellipse right here on this plane, created within this plane, then I see where I'm running through this diagonal. Well, this diagonal is the same as this form recedes, then it's going to have the very same location. It's just going to be proportionately smaller and further away. So if I line up with that mark and my vanishing point, then I can come back and I see that I should be moving through here. So I'm going to repeat that here. My ellipse in the front, I'm going to line up with where it intersects on my diagonal, line up with my vanishing point, and I should pass through there. And then I have a very last one down here. I see right where that circle passes this diagonal, line up with my vanishing point, and run back. I should be passing through behind back here. So now I have more pieces of my puzzle to know where I would like to move. There, so I have those pieces, and then really the last thing is with a cylinder we have those two circles and then they're connected. So it's like a tube, and here we have our ellipses, right, circles in perspective, and what we're going to do is we'll use this, right, this point and this one, and we're going to take our ruler, line it up with our vanishing point, see how that rolls right in. And then the same thing along the bottom, we're looking for our point of departure, and we can see that it's this bottom piece. So with some ink, oh, remember how I was talking about doing that broken line? Because it would help us to stretch. Oh. Well, I'm going to do it again. Oh, and I got away from it up here. Okay, so that's our cylinder. Oh, it is a little bit wonky. All right. And then the very last thing we're going to do is we're going to work with the idea of a pitched roof. So last week we did a pyramid. This week we're going to work with a pitched roof, things that start with P. And surprise, this involves perspective center also. You'll notice the theme that it is required for many things. So it's great to know how to use, and it is a wonderful efficiency. So corner to corner. And I'm going to do that up here in the front on this plane, and I'm going to do that back here. So corner to corner in the back. There we go. And what I would like to do is, just like with our pyramid, we raised up that little antenna. So we're going to do that here. We're going to raise up an antenna. Oops, I'm going to use this ruler because it's a little bit taller. And I want to make sure I'm going through my center. And I want to make sure that I am a good true vertical. So I'm going to raise that up. I mean, I'm going to get some height on that right there. That's a bit ridiculous, to be honest. So from this point right here, we're going to come back to our corners, okay? So with our trace point here coming up from the corner, and then we will do the same thing on the other side, corner to trace point, okay? So now what we want to do before we start working back here is from this point, I would like to come back to this vanishing point. So if you notice that my information from this plane runs back to vanishing point 2, or the vanishing point on the right, in order to get to this back plane, right? The connection from here to here happens by going to this vanishing point. So if I extend information up and I want to connect to this back plane, I need to go that same direction. Linear perspective is very logical. It's just following the process over and over again, so there's not a lot of surprises. So the reason we wanted to put this line in is because we're going to raise up our antenna here in the back, but we needed to know how far up to go, and this line tells me exactly that. So remember that we're recreating what's happening in the front, in the back. It is in the proper rate of recession, so it stays in proportion. So that's what we're doing, is we're finding the proportionate height there in the back. So I'll take my, I guess I could use this one. I'll take my ruler, and let me make sure I've got a solid vertical, and I'm gonna just go right through my X, and I'm gonna raise it up to my receding line. So right here is where my antenna stops. And once I have this point, then I can come down to those corners. All right, so from this corner to that trace point, and we'll go to the other side. So from this corner, oops, to the trace point. Yes? So let's put some ink on it and make it official. It's like a gnome home. It's so tall and pointy. That's it. Also, if this had a little handle right here and maybe some curves, it could look like a lunchbox or a cooler or to-go container for food, but not just a pitched roof. So this deals with the idea of an inclined plane in 2-point perspective, which is what our pyramid functioned for in our 1-point perspective. So we worked through 4 different ideas, perspective center being the first one because we use it in everything else. So that one you're no stranger to. For evenly dividing space, what I would like for you to do is work on a top or a bottom plane. It's helpful when you have a good amount of space. So I was going to work up here, but the space is really narrow, so my lines were going to be very congested. And I don't mind that for myself. I felt like demonstration-wise, that's not as helpful. Then what we did was work with our circle, which as it is in perspective is called an ellipse. And then what we wanted to do was create a cylinder. So we used our ideas, on this one we used our ideas of perspective center just to continue breaking down the space. So we divided in half and then we divided that half in half and ended up with quarters. We did that this way, we did it this way. We utilized both of our vanishing points and then filled in every other one to create that checkerboard look. Here, as we worked on our ellipses, working on parallel planes. So I could work here, I could work here, I could work on this plane, and I could work on this one, I could work on the top, I could work on the bottom. So you have 3 choices as far as sets go, because those are the ones that are parallel to each other. And I went ahead and found perspective center, gave myself my major axis points. Vertical stays vertical. There are no horizontals, so anything that is dividing horizontally, it deals with the same vanishing point as the top and bottom of that plane. So I did that on this front plane and then its parallel plane in the back, finding perspective center, putting the axis lines in there. Then what I did here in the front is I came around and laid in my ellipse, making sure that I pass through those cardinal points and that I don't end up with any hard corners or points. Once I completed that ellipse, then I took a peek at where my circle, where my ellipse was running through these diagonals across the surface of this plane. And with that, at each intersection here, 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 and here along those diagonals, I have the same thing happening in that plane that is behind. So what I could do is line up my vanishing point and where that is intersecting all of those, and then make the corresponding mark back here. And then what happens is as I go to draw in my ellipse on this back plane, then I have more markers that tell me exactly where I need to go through. There's another process for dividing this space up further that breaks it down into smaller increments and gets you more specific on where those curves are happening. But we don't, I don't want to say that we don't really need it, but we don't. This is close enough. And as we're working, this is not a perspective class, it's a drawing class. So this gets you used to the idea of ellipses and sort of the direction that they're traveling and where you want to see them and how they relate to one another. Especially when you think about working with a basic shape, or basic form like a cylinder. Now you're going to have that rounding top and bottom or side to side. So once I have both of my ellipses laid out, then I want to connect them. And the way that this front and back plane are connected is with lines that are going to the vanishing point 2. So I want to look at my outermost point, which is right here, and I want to connect to my vanishing point 2, and I follow that back and it's going to connect right here. So here and here. And then I look on the opposite side of my cylinder, look for the outermost point here, and then I know it's going to be this one here. And then again, from this point to my vanishing point, place my ruler and draw that line, and that gets me my cylinder. The very last piece that we needed to work through was the idea of our pitched roof. That gets us working with inclined planes. Again, drawing perspective center here on the front and the back. We're going to raise our antenna through perspective center and up to its up to you, wherever you want, however high you would like your pitch to be or low. And from that, the tip of your antenna, you're going to have a trace point, and that's going to connect you to those corners. So you'll raise up here. Also from this trace point, you're going to take a convergence line back to vanishing point 2. Noticing that if I want to connect with this plane, then I need a receding line that goes towards that plane, and that would be connecting to your vanishing point on the right. So we take that back, and that lets us know how high our antenna needs to be. And we have its location left to right in that plane because we already found the center. So we put our ruler right through center and raise our antenna up to that spot, and that's our trace point from which to come back to this corner and this corner. Okay, so those 4, and you're going to start with these 10, and I have every confidence that with our work in the 1-point perspective process that you guys will take on to this quite easily. Many students have a much easier time with the 2-point perspective than they do 1. I don't know why, but I've noticed that over the years. So let's get this work done, and that will complete our section on linear perspective. All right, I am excited to see what you guys come up with. Thank you so much for working so hard. I would like to encourage you still to use the discussion forum if you have questions or concerns about the material, as well as emailing me, and I'm happy to talk with you there. Okay, happy drawing, and I'll talk to you guys next week.